hello to you guys. I am ASMR Weetal. By the way, I hope you're all doing great. Today I'm going to do a video I've been looking forward to doing. A super nerdy ramble about games I enjoy playing type of video. There even was a request for a nerdy ramble video, but I would actually have done it anyway because I love doing nerdy rambles. So just a fair warning to people here, this is going to be like a super nerdy ramble type of video. So if you don't enjoy nerdiness, then don't watch, but if you like nerdy rambles, this is for you. So before I begin, I'm so looking forward to getting back into gaming this week. You see, last year I had a period lasting from May to about now where I have done very little gaming. I have been playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla, but only occasionally, a few days, so I haven't gotten that far. And there's just been so many other things, like ASMR, filming, watching films and TV series, so gaming hasn't been a priority. But this week I am getting back into gaming and I'm looking so forward to it because I've kind of missed it. And I'm looking so forward to get back into gaming again because I've been gaming since childhood and since I was a teen and before that since childhood, and I'm so looking forward to gaming, but also to do this ramble about games I enjoy. So let's just begin, shall we? So you heard me mention Assassin's Creed. And this is Assassin's Creed Valhalla. It's what I'm playing these days. So I'm just going to put this back. And the Assassin's Creed franchise is an historical type of gaming series where you play. It sort of tells the story of a battle which has raged on throughout history between the Assassins' Order and the Templars' Order. The Assassins, to simplify things the Assassins sort of stand for freedom, the Templars stand for subjugation and control of society, while the Assassins stand for freedom. But that's oversimplifying it a little bit, but we're not getting into the plot things of plot now. Apologies. We are getting more into the gist of it, the core of it. So the various Assassin's Creed games takes place in various historical areas where you play as an assassin, often opposing the Templar Order, or as it is called in the later games, the Order of Ancients. And whereas the Assassins is actually called the Hidden Ones in later games, but it takes place across various areas in history. You have everything from Paris during the French Revolution, London during the Victorian era, the Renaissance in Italy, Rome during the Renaissance, and even the American Revolution, lots of different historical areas. And in that relation, you have the very famous Ezio trilogy, you have the American saga, but you also have the more recent games, which are I'm going to call it, and it's often called that, the Ancient Saga. And that's because the 4 last games have been set to ancient historical periods, predating the other games. The first one, Origins, was set to ancient Egypt, and the second was set to ancient Greece, and the one I'm playing now is set to the Age of Vikings and is set to Norway and England in the 870s during the medieval age. So this series has evolved quite a lot over the years. It started out more as a Prince of Persia inspired Assassin's type of series. The first game, the first Assassin's Creed, is really very simple and basic. Fun in its own way, but very simple and basic. And when with Assassin's Creed, the series evolved, added a little more features, but the series used to be less RPG and more simple, more about stealth and blending in and assassinations and stuff. During the American saga with Black Flag, actually with Assassin's Creed 3 and Black Flag. Black Flag was the pirates game. It was set during the Pirate Age. When Assassin's Creed became even more of an open world, which you could explore, we started a little with Assassin's Creed 3, where you could truly explore nature, and stuff. And the Black Flag truly opened up the world, adding even ship exploration, sea exploration, and full-scale open world exploration. And some of the more recent games have really had some huge open world maps. Origins, Odyssey, and Valhalla all features huge open world maps, and they are all more RPG role-playing games focused and less stealth focused. There have been Altogevis games have been hugely successful. Of course, many of the earlier Assassin's Creed games, especially the Ezio trilogy, have been hugely successful. But Altogevis' new open world games have been hugely successful. There have been some parts of the fan base who have missed more of the stealth-based games. And in response to that, they created Assassin's Creed Mirage, which is set in Baghdad around the same time as Valhalla. And in this game, it's more of you explore more of a city, the map is smaller, and it's more stealth focused again. And they have also announced a game called Hex, which will also apparently go more back to being different and a little more stealth focused, a little more smaller scale. But the upcoming game, Assassin's Creed Shadows, set to Japan during the 16th century, will be more of an open world RPG again. But it will reportedly also be the last one to be like that. There have also been a few city exploring games in the franchise, like Brotherhood, Revelations, Unity, and Syndicate. They're all set in major cities. Brotherhood was set in Rome, Revelations was set in Constantinople, and I apologize if I pronounce that wrong. And Unity was set in Paris, and Syndicate in London. And then you have Mirage, which is set in Baghdad. So I have played most of the Assassin's Creed games. I'm in the process of playing Valhalla. I have not played Mirage yet, and I have obviously not played the upcoming game, which hasn't been released yet. It's a very fun series, and I am more of an RPG player myself, but I did appreciate the more old-fashioned games, like the Ezio trilogy, and even the American saga, where stealth was more of a priority. But I really enjoy the open world RPG stuff too. I really loved Odyssey, and I greatly enjoyed Origins too. As for Valhalla, which I'm playing now, I am looking so forward to getting much more into that. I have come to England. I am past the whole prologue part in Norway, and I have built a settlement and finished the first main quest, and I'm in the process of finishing the second main quest. So, but I have to say, for Valhalla so far, very enjoyable, very, very enjoyable, very enjoyable. It started a little slow, but I'm really getting into the game now, and I of course loved exploring Norway. Most of the game is set in England, but there are a few parts in Norway, so as a Norwegian, truly appreciated that. And I enjoy the whole world event system, where you can just explore the world and find various events going on in the world. Some of them are even small types of quests almost. And I enjoy exploring England during the medieval age, because in previous years when I played Assassin's Creed, I have always kind of missed a medieval setting. So it is great to finally be able to play that, you know, with the medieval mystical forests of England, and it's just beautiful, really. And of course, Altok, I have to add, but Valhalla is probably the game which feels the least like an Assassin's Creed game. It's a super enjoyable game, but it's really more of a Viking game, and Odyssey was already pushing that a little, but with Valhalla it really feels much more like a Viking game than an Assassin's game, but it's truly enjoyable for what it is. But you know what, I've been talking enough about Assassin's Creed now, let's move on to the next game. So, we're getting into the Ramble, you know. Here you see Hogwarts Legacy, lived unwritten. This is Harry Potter, my friends. This is Harry Potter. Harry Potter. So this is from the Harry Potter universe. I love Harry Potter. I've watched all the movies. I'm just going to put this back. I've watched all the movies, read the books, and I've even watched the Fantastic Beasts movies, and I've also played Hogwarts Legacy, which I did last year, and honestly, even though I'm a big Harry Potter fan, I did not have high expectations for this game. Yes, I did see it get strong reviews and great critical reception, but I thought I still was skeptic if I was going to like it, but it turned out I loved it. Which was surprising, because I was a little skeptic, you know. Sometimes there comes games and stuff which is just overrated, in my opinion, but it turns out Hogwarts Legacy wasn't overrated, at least not in my opinion. It was actually a great game, which was a little surprising. It started a little slow, you know, but once you got into the game, got a few hours into the game, it started to become really enjoyable. I say that when you get access to the world outside Hogwarts and you get to Hogsmeade and further on, you know, it's really a great game. It has a really enjoyable story, which was surprising, and it's enjoyable to explore Hogwarts and find the various lore around the wizarding world. So, but Hogwarts Legacy is actually set 100 years before the time of Harry Potter. It is set in the year 1890, so it explores a completely different time of history in the wizarding world, a completely different time in the timeline. Because of that, the clothing the students wear in the game and stuff is late 19th century type of clothes, and everything is sort of reflective of the late 19th century. So it's the wizarding world during the 1890s. And it's an area which hadn't been explored before, so it's really enjoyable, you know. You essentially attend Hogwarts as a 5th-year student. You get to choose a house, and with the house often comes a unique house quest. There's actually one quest. Each house has a unique quest, actually, during the main story campaign. I chose Hufflepuff because that's my house. My second choice would be Gryffindor, actually, but I chose Hufflepuff. They have a very cozy common room, by the way, in the game. Anyway, it was really an enjoyable playthrough. You attended Hogwarts school classes. You can explore Hogwarts and even the world beyond. You know, you can explore Hogsmeade and the areas around Hogwarts, various villages, settlements, you know. It's a true open world RPG, and it's surprisingly enjoyable. Unfortunately, there's no Quidditch in the game, but you can ride a broomstick. Yeah. And Hogsmeade, I'm just going to say this, explore Hogsmeade, because exploring Hogsmeade is a great experience, you know, it's fun. So it's a full-scale RPG, essentially role-playing game, with lots of fun quests and storylines and stuff like that. I'm not really going to spoil anything. There are very few, you know, all the prominent persons from the Harry Potter movies are not present in the game. Most of them anyhow, because most of them have not even been born yet at this point in the timeline. So, but anyway, but you get to explore Hogwarts, you get to live as a student through the various seasons of the year, from summer, autumn, winter, spring. And yeah. And you even get to see Christmas at Hogwarts at one point during the campaign, so it's really enjoyable. There is so much to do, so much to explore. You get to go into the Forbidden Forest, and there are many secrets, and it's a true, well-crafted Harry Potter game. So I had a blast. I enjoyed it. I loved playing it. I had a blast playing it. I loved playing it. So if you love Harry Potter and RPGs, then I would strongly advise trying Hogwarts Legacy. And if you are like me, you love lore and history, there is lots of that in Hogwarts Legacy. You even get to visit Hogsmeade Station, essentially the station where the Hogwarts Express sort of stops when it reaches Hogwarts, and there are some lore entries there too, so it's really enjoyable. And it's also cool to see the Wizarding World, how it looked like and how it was 100 years before the time of Harry Potter. But let's move on to the next game. Dragon Age, my friends. You may have heard about this game. This is from BioWare, and BioWare is a gaming company I have followed ever since I was a teen. They have created things like Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, Mass Effect, the Mass Effect trilogy, and the Mass Effect Andromeda game, which followed up on that trilogy. But they also created the Dragon Age series. This is Dragon Age Inquisition, the third game in the series. So I'm going to tell you guys a little about that. The Dragon Age is a dark fantasy type of series, and it is set in a completely different world. A fantasy world, a world called Fortidas. And this world consists of various countries. It has a sort of medieval fantasy type of setting. And the various games have different heroes you play as, and it's set in different parts of this world, in different countries of this world. It takes place during the century known as Dragon Age, which is the 10th century of the Dragon Age timeline. Essentially, the story of Origins begins in 930. Dragon. It's called, you see, each century in the Dragon Age franchise has a name, and the century which the Dragon Age games are set is called for the Dragon Age. So 930 Dragon is essentially the year of that timeline. BioWare companies often been great at world building and lore, and Dragon Age, there is a lot of lore and history in Dragon Age. There are so many codex entries and stuff you can read about the history of the world, and that's in pretty much every Dragon Age game. Now, Dragon Age did just recently release a new game, a fourth game, Dragon Age the Veilguard, came out now in November last year. I have not played this one. I'm going to play it later on, but I haven't played the Dragon Age games for like almost a decade. So it's been a long time since I've actually played the Dragon Age games, but I'm planning to get around to it again. I hope I get around to it again, because I want to play them, especially now that a new Dragon Age game has been released. So it's set during Dragon Age, and there are lots of different conflicts and stuff going on in this world. The Dragon Age story of all the games isn't really only about one thing. Each game is about something different, really, and there are lots of subthreads and subplots in each game. But let's begin with the simple. In Dragon Age Origins, you essentially begin by choosing an origin story. You can be an elf, a dwarf, or a human, and when it comes to humans and elves, you can be either a mage, essentially a wizard, or a warrior or rogue. With dwarves you can only be warrior or rogues, because dwarves in the Dragon Age world cannot wield magic. So you can choose one of 6 origin stories, and when you play through that origin story, and then you get recruited into an order called for the Grey Wardens, and the Grey Wardens, they essentially defend Tidus from something called for the Darkspawn, and they are kind of these goblin orc-like creatures which want to sort of invade and destroy the world. They are led by this huge dragon thing called an archdemon. And every few centuries they come in something called a blight, which is when they sort of invade and try to sort of destroy the world. And the Grey Wardens protect from that. There have been 4 blights prior to Dragon Age Origins, and in Origins we see the beginning of a 5th blight, which now sort of is about to rampage on through Ferelden. And Ferelden is actually the country Dragon Age Origins is set in, and it's sort of a game which lies in the southern part of this fictional world. And it's really the southernmost country, one of the southernmost countries, and it's the equivalent of medieval Britain actually. And yeah, it's sort of the parallel to that from our world. And Ferelden, you know, in Tidus, it's actually a little opposite of our world, because in Tidus, the most southern part of the world are the coldest, whereas the northern part of the worlds are the warmest. So it's opposite of our world. So Tidus can be a somewhat cold place, especially in the... Ferelden can be a somewhat cold place, especially in the far south of Ferelden. But the first game is set within Ferelden, and you have to defend Ferelden from this horde of Darkspawn, and you have to recruit various factions within the country to fight off this horde. So I'm not going to spoil the details of the story, but that's the gist of it, essentially. Dragon Age 2 follows a different hero called for Hawk. And you can choose the background in the same as Origins, but you can choose which class you want, and that will sort of shape things a little for Hawk. There are especially huge differences in the Dragon Age 2 story regarding whether you play as a mage, essentially a magic user, or as a non-magic user. So there are some different backgrounds for warrior, rogue, and mage you can choose from. But or at least a few differences. Dragon Age 2 is set in the city-state of Kirkwall, in the Free Marches just north of Ferelden. So this was sort of a smaller scale game, actually. And you know, you can explore Kirkwall, the city, and some of the areas outside Kirkwall, especially if you have the DLCs. But this tells a more personal story. You're not really saving the world from anything in Dragon Age 2. You are Hawk, and the player Hawk, and his or her family, because you can choose which gender you want to play as. It's an RPG after all. Is fleeing from the blight, which has rocked Ferelden, and they get to Kirkwall as a refugee, and you have to sort of build yourself up, build up money, you know, stuff like that. Do quests to sort of find your place in the world in the first act. And then in the second act, you have sort of moved up in the world, and you deal with a political conflict in regards to the Qunari, who are one of the species in the game, and they are kind of brutal and have a very special culture, and Tidus has a complicated history with them. And then in the third act it deals with the whole conflict between Templars and mages, because you see in the Dragon Age world, particularly both northern and southern Tidus, but especially southern Tidus, is run by a chantry, which is essentially the equivalent of a church. And this chantry does not accept magic users living in freedom. They want to control all magic. And the Templars are there to sort of ensure that magic users are controlled. But not all magic users enjoy that. So some mages are rebels to this order. So the third act deals with the whole conflict between Templars and mages. And then, so after the extreme events, which takes place at various points in the 930s Dragon Age of Dragon Age 2, we go on to Inquisition, and now this is set around 941 to 42 Dragon Age, and it takes place across Ferelden and Olay, and Olay is sort of the equivalent of France. And it's a full-scale open world game with huge explorable areas and stuff. But during this time, the world of Southern Tidus is truly falling apart, because now there is a full-scale war between the mages and the Templars, and the whole order of society, which has been stable for so long, and which you even got insight in during the first two games, through the chantry, even that is now falling apart. So to make matters worse, there has now been a breach in the veil, and the veil separates the dead and the living, and that breach is now meaning that demons are pouring out through these breaches, these holes, into the world of Tidus. So you play as the Inquisitor and form an Inquisition to start to re-establish order and sanity to this world, and trying to find a new path for Southern Tidus. Inquisition is sort of the conclusion to the whole Southern Tidus arc. And then now, 10 years later, we had the Veilguard. The Veilguard is set in Northern Tidus, including the Tevinter Imperium, but also a few of the other northern countries like Rivain and Tiva and Anderfels and stuff like that. These are countries we had only heard about through lore entries in the first 3 games. And I haven't played the game, but just read a little about it, so I can't say much, but the plot is essentially that you play as a person called for a rook, who essentially has to sort of assemble a team, and you have to stop the elven gods and goddesses, including the Dreadwolf, from tearing apart the entire Veil. Because apparently the Dreadwolf wants to tear apart the entire Veil, which separates the dead and the living. So I'm sure the Veilguard deals more with the stuff going on in Northern Tidus, but I haven't spoiled myself, so I can't tell that much about it. The first game is it was very well received, is often a favorite of the community. It even has an expansion pack called for Awakening, but also a few DLCs. And it's sort of a classical, more tactical role-playing game. It's really the most classical RPG of them all. So in that game you are you play sort of I just have to find the right words here. Apologies, my friends, apologies. Yeah. In that game you are playing sort of, there is lots of strategy, lots of tactics and stuff like that during the combat, but also lots of choices and lots of role playing. The game is not really open world, but there is a lot of locations to enjoy all the same. The second game actually is often regarded as the black sheep of the Dragon Age franchise. It was not well received by critics and a lot of players when it was released, but it has gotten a cult following later on. It actually has quite a few fans now later on, but at the time of the release it was not well received. Dragon Age 2 steps a little more into the modern gaming area of BioWare games. It adds the dialogue wheel and it does some modernizing things, but and it tells a much more smaller scale personal story. It's not focused so much on the big world events, but more on the smaller scale events. There is some limits to exploration here because you are restricted to Kirkwall, the city of Kirkwall and the areas around it. And there is lots of repetition in the environments, but it has some interesting combat. And it has a really nice personal story, and really, although Origins was very dark fantasy, Dragon Age 2 really deals with some meta themes, like Dragon Age 2 really is truly dark fantasy, and in that regard, it is actually a very worthy successor to Origins. Because Dragon Age 2 deals with some very meta themes, actually. It's in some ways it's perhaps the most meta of all the Dragon Age games. And it was criticized for reusing. A lot of the dungeons often look the same, we have often just reused the dungeons and stuff, but it's still an enjoyable game, and it's an enjoyable cast of companions, and it's an enjoyable story, and it's a fun game in its own right, but it's different from the other games, undeniably, and it's smaller scale. When you get to Inquisition, and Inquisition is like the opposite. It's the huge open world game, and it's an epic save the world game, and you have areas like the hinterlands, for example, lots of nature to explore. Dragon Age 2 was very much a city game, set mostly within Kirkwall. You had a few nature areas, but not that many. But in Inquisition, there is lots of nature. In return, there is not much in the way of grand cities in Inquisition. You get to visit a small part of Val Royeaux, the Elysian capital. There is Skyhold, which is a nice hub, and you also, during the starting phases of the game, you have the village of Haven, I believe, which you also have as a temporary base, and there is of course the village of Redcliffe, and then there is the Winter Palace, but that's only accessible temporarily during certain portions of the game. So Dragon Age Inquisition focuses more on the open world and less on the city stuff. It's more of a big scale game, but it was very well received, and even received the Game of the Year award, I believe, or something like that. And it was very well received. The World of Inquisition is a little more colorful than the first two games, but it's still dark fantasy in tone and story. It's a fun cast of companions. It's a little different from the two previous games because it's more vast. There's lots more to explore. Some people in the fan base felt like the open world was a little bit too much, but there are some stunning and beautiful locations here. When we come to Veilguard, the fourth game in the series, I haven't played it, but I've read a little about it, and the reception to that game has been, well, all over the place. It received initial very good reaction. It received praise from critics and many players, but it has also received criticism from parts of the fanbase and community. And the reactions afterwards have been a little mixed. It's been a little all over the place, really. I've seen people say they love the Veilguard, but I've also seen people say they don't think Veilguard is a Dragon Age game at all, and that it's the worst game, The reactions have been all over the place. And when I've seen other people say it's the best game, it's just been like so many different reactions, depending entirely on who you ask. But the Veilguard has been, well, we can go with what it has been criticized for first. The Veilguard, while still dark fantasy, it plays it a little safer than the three first games. It's a little less, it's while still dark fantasy, it is a little more colorful apparently than the former games and has a somewhat lighter tone in some areas, and plays it very safe, you know. And some people feel it plays it too safe and feels like it's not really a true Dragon Age games. But it features Northern Tidus, and the positive things I read about it is, of course, that you get to explore Minratos, the capital city of the winter. I know that some people, not all, enjoy the new companions and the new crew, and it sort of balances the small-scale story of Dragon Age 2 with the bigness of Inquisition. It's not a full-scale open world the same way as Inquisition. It's more of... there is a lot to explore apparently, but it's more mission-focused, but there's still a lot to explore. So it takes sort of a smaller scale, more personal story, but mixes it a little with the epic save the world story, you know. Still, it is said that it has some of the most stunning and beautiful locations in the entire series. But not all feel it is a true Dragon Age game. So, when it comes to the Veilguard, whether it's the best, worst game or just in the middle, it depends entirely on who you ask, really. It depends entirely on who you ask. It has had a very weird reception, that's for sure. But anyway, let's just move on to Mass Effect. So, I see I've been rambling a lot now, but I want to ramble a little about Mass Effect 2. This is Mass Effect 2, the special edition, the collector's edition of Mass Effect 2. Mass Effect 2. And I'm just going to ramble a little about that quickly, because I see now I've been using a lot of time rambling, and that's probably been enjoyable for a lot of you guys, but it's time to conclude it. And well, Mass Effect is also from BioWare, and it's a science fiction series which is very enjoyable. It's a first action shooter, a role-playing game, and it's set in the 2180s, the first trilogy anyway, and it follows the story of Commander Shepard, who has to stop an ancient threat which is about to return to the galaxy. I'm not going to say more about it than that. So the first game deals with sort of... and it takes... yeah, apologies, now I'm mumbling and losing the words here. I'm just going to... yes. It takes place in the 2180s, and that's a time when humanity has joined the galactic community and are now interacting with other species and a part of a galactic community stretching across the galaxy, you know, the Milky Way galaxy. So in the first game you try to unravel a mystery, finding out what kind of ancient threat is about to return to the galaxy. In the second game it tells a more personal story of you assembling a crew of companions to go on a sort of a suicide missions, and you have to sort of get all of your companions, if it's possible, alive through that mission. And in the third game it's a full-scale war game, as that ancient threat comes to the galaxy, and the galaxy is at war. And then you have Mass Effect Andromeda, which is set in the Andromeda galaxy centuries after the original trilogy, with a completely different hero. And that's an initiative which is trying to colonize the Andromeda galaxy, but we meet challenges on that path. It's a very enjoyable science fiction RPG series. I'm not going to say too much about it. And in each game of the original trilogy you have a hub, a city called for the Citadel, which is the seat of galactic civilization. And you see different parts of and versions of the Citadel in each game, you know. There are a few other cities featured in the game too. You have cities like Omega, the old criminal station, outlaw station, you know, and you have Ilium, Tuchanka. And in Andromeda you have Kadara Port, and Aya, and the Nexus, and in Andromeda the Nexus is sort of the hub station. But So it's a role-playing game, so you get to explore and do quests too. You can get to explore some peaceful areas and do quests, but there is also lots of combat quests and lots of enjoyable story stuff. So the first Mass Effect is sort of about a mystery. The second Mass Effect is sort of a more personal story. And in the second Mass Effect you are even working with a rogue terrorist organization of human supremacists called for Cerberus. And then in the third game you have to deal with the war thing, It takes place across lots of planets and stuff. The final thing I want to say about it, the first game takes place in the Attican Traverse region of the galaxy for the most part. And that's the place of lots of human colonies and uncharted worlds. The second game takes place in the Loveless Terminus systems, which is the loveless parts of the galaxy. The third game takes very much place in console and alliance space during a time of war. You get to visit a lot of the various species' homeworlds and the world pinnacles of galactic civilization. And then there's the Andromeda, which takes place in the mostly unexplored Andromeda galaxy. And Andromeda is a full-scale open-world game. The first 3 games are more mission-focused. There is some open-world exploration in the first Mass Effect, but Mass Effect Andromeda is full-scale open-world exploration. The next Mass Effect, which will be released a few years from now, if everything goes as planned, we don't know that yet, but if that's what we're working on, will be more mission-focused and will apparently focus on the Milky Way again. So it will be Mass Effect Andromeda will probably be the unique open-world entry, mostly because it wasn't really well received. The original trilogy was very popular. Mass Effect Andromeda was not as well received, so yeah. But anyway, but Mass Effect Andromeda still has some stunning, beautiful location, and it's actually kind of fun to explore those open-world planets. Because you truly get to explore the various planets in that game. Anyway, I could talk a lot more about all of this, but I feel I've rambled more than enough now. Hope the ramble was enjoyable for those of you who enjoy super nerdy rambles. And wish you guys a great week. Thank you for listening and watching, and for being patient during this super nerdy ramble.